Blessings 4. I don't think you need any instructions in this, Mr. Celestine said, watching me while my hands were stuck in the dirt and I worked a bit of magic over the winter vegetable garden. And with your healing coming along nicely, we'll have quite the show to put on come the solstice. I did this a lot with Mama. We ate a lot of fruits and nuts from the trees we passed. It was a little strange at times how nice such a simple diet could be. While we had better access to spices than most Ghanaians, by virtue of being able to grow them ourselves, even from dried seeds and in bad conditions, it was still fairly simple food. But since I hadn't had the absurd richness or sweetness, in this life my palate was fine with it. And lots of bread and cheese, travel rations. Cheese was still delicious, but the times we got to have fresh milk were honestly even better. Unsurprising, you hardly had a chance to sit down and plot and harvest, traveling as you did. Mama, who was working with me on the plans, nodded, but she didn't speak up. I was really getting worried. There was something wrong, but I didn't know what or how to fix it. It's great having more variety. Sometimes I miss the views though. Considering how sedentary I'd been before, I'd grown kind of attached to traveling. Not so much I wanted to leave, but when the only part of the view that changed was the masts on the ships in the harbour, it felt a little odd. I like watching the ships come and go, seeing the various kingdoms that trade with us. I saw a Thalassian ship last week. It was very different. Mr. Celestine turned a curious eye on me. Oh? And how did you see that? I didn't know there was anything on our farm you could see the bite from. Even from the second floor, all you can see is the building of Kiel. Gwyneth? Mama, on the other hand, had guessed exactly what I'd done. Have you been climbing again? It's not hard to get onto the roof, I protested, not looking at either of them. I enjoyed being so light that it was a breeze to climb things. And even if I fell and got hurt, I could heal myself. Mrs. Celestine said I was ready for broken bones now even. And it's good and sturdy so it can take my weight. If you are going up there, you can help sweep our chimney, Mr. Celestine said, cutting off Mama before she could say anything more. And you will inform one of us if you are going up there. I trust you will be able to keep yourself safe, but if you slip and fall, someone needs to know. Mama deflated and nodded meekly. Yes, that's reasonable. Now the field won't bless itself, so back to work. Honestly, I was happy the matter got dropped. Mama was just like Mama had been, concerned over how I just zoomed up trees. At least this time around, I'd never gotten stuck. After half an hour or so, Mama was starting to flag, but Mr. Celestine and I just kept going. It was simple and very repetitive work. The tollbackers planted a lot of root vegetables for winter, and we had to go through all the fields. It was worth it to have plump and tasty things to eat as it got colder, but it was still a lot of work, weaving the same bits of magic to discourage pests, blight, and direct the plants to not get in each other's way as they grew. They'd end up bigger than most other farms could get really easily, and grow better through the winter too. It only made more clear why the tollbackers were happy to have Celestine married to one of their own. Marcus, one of Celestine's brothers-in-law, was even shadowing us and keeping a protective eye out. He flashed a small smile at me and waved when I looked his way. It was so different than how everyone else treated us. I liked it. We were closing on another hour of work when something happened. Mama! I cried out as I saw her fall over. Mr. Celestine had asked if she wanted to stop earlier, but she had said she was fine. She was not fine! Mama, are you okay? She was breathing hard, lying in the dirt beside a row of turnips. She tried to smile at me, but it didn't last through her heaving breaths. Mama! I dropped to my knees at her side, ready to try and heal whatever was wrong, when Mr. Celestine grabbed my hand. No, she ordered, her voice chastising. It isn't physical. She overtaxed herself. You should have stopped sooner, Erwin. Mr. Celestine glowered down at Mama. You know your limits. Why did you keep going? Gwen was... Mama gasped, swallowing and taking in a deep breath before trying to speak again. What kind of... She wheezed. Mother can't keep up with her child. One who knows better, Mr. Celestine spat. Stay with your mother, Gwyneth. I'll finish the work for the day. Marcus, get over here and help Erwin back to the house. She needs to rest. Marcus trotted up as Mr. Celestine marched away, her magic washing over the plant steadily as she went. I felt her frustration in the spells she wove. She didn't like what Mama did either. You should have, Mama, I said, my voice hitching. I was scared. She collapsed. She fell over and couldn't get back up. Why would she scare me like that? Why? What was wrong and why wouldn't she tell me? I love you, I mumbled, clutching at her hand. She squeezed back, but there was no smile, just a hint of tears as my own eyes grew blurry. I didn't hear what Marcus said as he picked up Mama in a princess carry, hiccoughing sobs taking me over as I walked along still holding her hand. They didn't stop until we were back in our corner, Mama tucked away in our cot, and I snuggled myself into her arms, reassuring myself that she was still there. Damn it, I muttered, my quill leaving another splotch on the parchment as I tried to make notes. I learned quickly that, while I could write, doing so with a quill was a horrible pain in the arse. You had to keep dipping and dipping and dipping, and if you pushed wrong or made a mistake, it'd splotch or smear, not just ruining what you were trying to write just then, but the words around it too. My writing had been miserable in my last life too. I learned to spell with a keyboard rather than a pen or pencil. Now I needed the skill, and it was going to be a struggle and expensive to get it. Rather than ruining my nice notebook, which I wanted to keep special, I was using some scrap parchment that could be scrapped down to let it be used for practice. All I'd written down so far were some very, very carefully written names. Thrashing machine, jacquard punching card loom, water frame, carding drum. Not notes, not how they worked, just reminders so I might better remember and get the ideas down later when I could write more than a single word without ruining a page. I noted a few major events I knew were coming too. Lordaeron's plague, Arthas, the Northgate Rebellion, and the Worgen. I didn't want to forget. As I was about to put quill to paper again, something tugged on my hair. Then again, harder. Ow! Looking to the side, I saw Emmeline, the older of Mr. Celestine's two daughters, had tangled her hands in my hair and was grinning up at me. Gwen! She said loudly. Hi, Emma, I replied, putting my quill to the side and reaching over to try and detach her from my hair. Can you let go, please? No! Gwen! She grabbed up more of my light brown hair, bringing it up to her mouth. No, don't! I whined, digging her hands and keeping them from grabbing more of my hair. She took it as a game, giggling, tangling up her tiny little hands in my hair as she latched onto my fingers and smiled. I slowly worked, trying to get my hair away from her, but as she figured out what I was doing, her face scrunched up, ready to cry. Letting out a sigh, I decided damp and chewed hair, while not nice, was better than an upset toddler. Fine, I grumbled half-heartedly, letting her get what she wanted, my hair in her mouth. But stay quiet, Mama's sleeping. It had been a little under a week since Mama had hurt herself pushing too hard, and she was still sick. I caught her crying to herself a lot in her cot, too weak to get up and move. I told her I loved her, that she didn't have to do so much, that I was happy. It didn't help. I spent as much time as I could with her. As soon as Mr. Celestine let me go from her lessons, I came back and spent my time with her. It gave me a chance to write, or try to, but there was a feeling to her silence that didn't feel good. It meant I was around Emmeline more too, and had been sort of shanghaied into looking after Rosalind too. Babies were loud and messy when they weren't sleeping, but also very cute. No, Mama! She pointed at Mr. Celestine, who was visibly outside through the open door. While she was distracted, I saved the rest of my hair by bundling it up and putting it out of her reach while she wasn't looking. Mr. Celestine isn't my Mama. My Mama is here. I tapped the cot I was leaning against. And she's sleeping. Please be quiet for her. Emma looked at me seriously, eyeing the hair that was just out of her reach and glaring at Mama too. Yes, she said eventually, as if it was a great boon she was gifting me. She then raised up her arms and held them there, looking at me imploringly. Gwen? With a sigh, I hefted her up and dropped her in my lap, pulling her tight against me. She curled up, snuggling into my tunic, and stuffing a finger wrapped up in my hair into her mouth. You are lucky you're cute, I mumbled as I resigned myself to getting my hair sucked and chewed on for the foreseeable future. It could be worse. At least she wasn't trying to pull it out. And I did like kids, at least when I didn't have to look after them all the time. After a while, and a lot of nonsense babbling from Emma that I answered as seriously as I could, it was hard to have a serious conversation when one side used Gwen as every fifth word, and 3 of the others weren't actual words, she started drifting off to sleep. Not long after, Mama stirred. It was closer to noon than dawn, so she had been sleeping in quite a long time. Good morning, she said softly. Shouldn't you... No, I'm stuck, see? I brought her attention to the toddler napping in my lap. Finally stopped eating my hair too. Mama's hands moved, brushing through my hair and drawing it up, her fingers combing through it. I relaxed as she worked. It was nice. Do you like it here? She asked after several minutes. I responded. I'm learning a lot. It's a little strange being in one place after moving around for so long, but they're friendly here, I said, unable to keep myself from grinning widely at the memories of not being shunned for being a witch or a witch's child. Jonas, asked me what being a witch was like, asked me about magic. He thought all magic users were the same, wanted me to conjure him a muffin like he heard mages could do. He got a little less interested in bothering me after I finished my hour-long rant on the different disciplines of magic. Funnily enough, it had helped me remember a lot of stuff about the various classes. I doubted he wanted another lecture, but he remained surprisingly attentive throughout, considering he was 10. Maybe he wanted to be a mage himself, and that's why he asked. His dad's not super friendly, but he didn't try to hover or drag him away from me when we talked. It's nice. She smiled. It was the same brittle smile I've been seeing more and more of. I'm glad you're happy, Mama told me. The problem was, I think, that Mama wasn't happy. Did she want to travel again? Did she not like it with Mistress Celestine? I wanted to keep learning. I agreed to be her apprentice, but I wanted Mama to be happy too. If that meant leaving, then we'd do that. Mama, I said, meeting her wary eyes. Are you happy here, Mama? I'm happy that you're happy, she answered, failing to answer my actual question. She kissed the top of my head gently before falling back into the cot. I love you so much, my wonderful little blessing. I know, but it didn't help, not when I knew she was hurting somehow, not when I loved her back. Love you too. This will take somewhat more finesse and patience than what you have been doing with our fields, Mr. Celestine told me as we stepped into her grove. Wood shaping is a rather slow process, but the results are well worth it. Personally, having seen the results, I wouldn't call it wood shaping. It was a form of enchanting, of imbuing magic into something with time and effort rather than using magical materials or dust, if they even existed outside of the game, to give the objects magic. This morning she had given me a small wood charm, a little bear dangling on a rough-spun woolen thread. I hadn't immediately realized what it was doing, but as I went about my assigned chores, what it did became obvious. The buckets of water I needed to carry up from the stream, normally so heavy I struggled with them if I filled them more than halfway, were light. A strength enchantment. Not that it managed to double my strength or anything absurd like that. No, it was merely a 10 or 20% increase. More than enough to be easily noticed and incredibly valuable, but not anything crazy or overpowered. That's fine, I can be patient. Mistress Celestine smiled knowingly at me. Of course you can, she said, but her eyes betrayed her amusement. I pouted at her. I could be patient. Just because I was 8 closing in on 9 didn't mean I was incapable of waiting around. I liked doing things and keeping occupied, but that didn't mean I had trouble waiting. A lot less than any normal 8-year-old did anyway. Now sit. You have the choice of working with the oak, like the charm I lent you, or intentionally creating another wraith of yarrow like the one you have there, she said, tapping the hardy oak tree that was the largest and oldest in her grove and gesturing at my yarrow wraith. It is far easier to make something you already know than to create something new, and thus easier to gain experience in the process of feeling of giving soul to our creations. For a moment I thought of anima, the stupid nonsense from the later lore rather than the Raden's blood, but I realized he just meant magic. It was part of the religious side of our art. Our gods, what few there were not often spoken of. I knew their names and who they really were, and that their names had been corrupted over time. The Eternal Father, Oddmar, was Odin. The Green Sage, Fren, was Freya. I wouldn't have been able to figure it out if it hadn't been for 2 names surviving more clearly. The Keeper of Scrolls, Arcadius, and the Great Guardian, Tyr. The old ways worshipped the Keepers, much like our Vrykul ancestors did long ago. All of them were present under different names, save the one from Pandaria, whose name I had forgotten entirely. Was never great with names, and his wasn't blatantly Norse like the others. But we didn't speak of them much. It was considered improper to invoke them. We were meant to live our lives as they would wish us to, rather than spend our days in worship, embodying their ideal. Only in reciting the ancient stories, of Tyr's great battle and sacrifice, of friends seeding the world with life, of Oddmar splitting himself off from his son and daughter gods to create the eternal halls where the dead go to rest, were we supposed to learn of them, and even then only at certain times of the year, in sacred rites and rituals. Mama had kept to them as best she could, but I knew I hadn't heard them all. Some she simply couldn't manage on her own, and her own faith didn't allow her to take shortcuts with their telling. Instead of our gods, the keepers, most of our craft instead focused on lesser things, on the meaning given to the plants and animals and their spirits, the most famous of which in Galneas was a wolf. Seen as a protector and leader, the wolf also represented kinship and loyalty. There was a reason the Greymane dynasty took a wolf as their sigil, and it wasn't just foreshadowed irony perpetuated by the sodding bronze dragonflight. In our myths, they howled at the moon not in rage or anger, but to more lost friends, or those they had failed to protect. It was sad to know the reality, that was the greatest of all wolves, Cauldron, was nothing of the sort and instead was consumed by bloodthirst and mad rage. Bears were, unsurprisingly, looked upon for their strength, their endurance and their preparation. They might not be the industrious beaver, but a bear was always working to be ready for winter. Some things were more important than others. Yarrow was just a small flower, fought a war of illness and aiding good health, but few would know that. Whereas even those who didn't follow the old ways regarded the mighty oaks of Galneas as shelter from a storm, as towering giants with strong limbs that withstood the world. The oak that made up the charm, and it being shaped into the form of a bear, fit well with the strength it gave its wearer. The same was true of my yarrow wraith and its empowerment of healing. Which would be more useful? I fiddled with my wraith. I hadn't taken it off in so long I hardly remembered it was there at times, still alive and blooming through the work of my magic. The charms have to be useful around the farm. For all I should be focused on the lesson, my mind drifted back to Mama, who even though she could get up and walk again was still listless. She kept praising me when I came to her and showed her what I learned, encouraged me to do more and better, trying to reassure me that nothing was wrong. But something was. I wanted to spend more time with her. I didn't want to be pushed away. Maybe I could take something from this lesson and use it with Mama. We still had the Mistthorn thread, It was magical, and with the days getting shorter and colder, there was less to do outside. A good time for weaving and sewing. We could make something with it, together, like we used to on the road. Mr. Celestine nodded, unaware of my infernal thoughts. The one I lent you is to be a marriage gift from Marcus. His sweetheart is set to join with him come spring. But in truth, most of the trinkets I make are sold. Soldiers in the Royal Army pay well for proven goods that give them a better chance in war. She leaned back against her tree, a hand brushing against a low branch, the leaves rustling without a hint of wind in response. We can hardly compete with the enchanters of Dalran, but our duty is to our people, as it has always been. If that means aiding them in far-off wars against monsters from another realm once again, I would prefer to send them off with every gift I can manage. There was a sorrowful hitch in her voice, and though I could guess as to why, I was still curious. Did you lose someone? She closed her eyes and nodded. I had 2 brothers once. Now I have just the one. She took in a long breath, the trees whispering their comfort. He is with our ancestors now. I reached over and squeezed her hand comfortingly. She kept her eyes shut but smiled lightly, and I waited for the moment to pass. Let's get back to your lesson, she said, holding my hand and drawing into the tree. Listen, feel, and follow what I do. You cannot force it or else you steal the soul of your work. Speed is fine for simple crops to be eaten, but this is more than that. It is an art unto itself. She led me through what she was doing as she coaxed the tree to start forming a knot of wood on a branch, and with careful pressures shaped how it would form. The same outline of a bear. But at the same time she did nothing to speed its growth, merely asking the tree to do this and offering her magic, her essence as she chose to call it, in exchange. The oak drank deep and grew ever so slightly more magical, more alive. Not enough to compare to the works of the Night Elves and their walking ancients, but it was why this growth felt so close, so friendly and almost tame. Bit by bit, day by day, Mistress Celestine had fed the spirits of these trees on her magic, like befriending a wild animal with food until they would stand by your side, tame but not domesticated, only with plants and magic instead of beasts and food. Nothing at all like the flooding and forced growing I had done to fruit our nut trees in the past. Wow. I couldn't help but whisper as I followed her work, fascinated by the process. It was so gentle.